In this particular video, I am going to discuss about how you can write a unit test case in Angular. In last video, we have discussed about how to do a setup of the component, what is the strategy for the unit testing, and what is the unit testing, why we are doing the unit testing. So all these things we have discussed in the previous video. Now let's try to understand how you can write a unit testing. Okay, so just to uh, summary that we are using the reactive form. We initialize the form in ng on init, and then there are the method. If someone will submit the form, then if the form is valid, this will call the API. But again, this I am using API service, so it will call the post data method from the API service, and accordingly data will be returned, and that data I am storing in the this dot data, means data, this variable. So let's try to do a unit testing. So the first test case will be if you will make any changes in the forms field, for example user and password. If you will make any changes, then same thing should be reflect in the component as well, or a reactive form instance as well. So you can see this is the form, this dot init, this is the reactive form. We have created this form with the help of the reactive form. So this forms of having the object, and it holds lots of information related to form, including the values. So we will check that if you will make any changes here, for example if you will change the username and password, then same thing is reflecting in this uh, variable or not. Suppose if you will do this dot init form dot value, then you will get the value. So value, same value you are getting or not, whatever you are updating through this input field. Okay, so we will check this scenario. So there can be a lots of scenario. We will check all of this scenario for the unit testing, but for now, for your making your understanding clear how you can write a code, just taking some this type of example. Okay, so in this way you will get the idea, and any type of unit test case you can write. Okay, so maybe in your project there are lots of business logic, lots of method and property, so you can write the same thing. You can see, once you will understand how you can write a unit test case, then you can write a test case for anything. Okay, so we will try to check the scenario for this. So how you can write? So I am in the app component.spec.ts. So as in the previous video I have discussed that in the Jasmine, first and foremost we have to write the describe. Describe is a method. In this describe method, we are describing that group of this unit testing belongs to, let's say, which section, or why we are writing this group of unit testing. You can describe about it, about your test suite. So here I am describing that I am writing for app component, component, something like that. Okay, this is the string, and then you have to pass the callback. So this is a simple callback. Now for test case I am using this method, means you have to use this method it. Again the pattern will be same, you have to pass the string. So let's say I am going to test a reactive form. So write here the test reactive form, and then you can describe about it. So you can based on like you need to provide the correct information, so that later on you will be able to identify that this test case is written for this purpose. Okay, so test reactive form, and then I can write here the check changes from HTML to component, something like that. It means that I am going to write a reactive for the reactive form. I am going to test that if you will make any changes in HTML, then same thing is reflecting in component or not. So again there will be a callback. Now, but here is a problem. How you can access the component? Without accessing the component, you will not able to test. Okay, so you have to get a same thing like in component. uh, Technically it will get compiled, and then after compiling, rendering will be happen. Okay, so lots of thing internally uh, happening for this particular component. So same thing you have to make, you have to create for the testing as well, because you doesn't have a access of app component here. So there are the Angular. Okay, Angular provides one library which is a TestBed. So we will use here the TestBed library, but again before going ahead, I am going to write in before each method. Why? Because before running each of these test method, let's say I am going to write another test case as well. Suppose second time if I will make the changes in component, then same thing should be reflected in HTML. So let's say I will also write the test case. So HTML, something like that. So there are the two test case. Okay, so before running each of these test case, you have to do certain initialization. You have to configure something so that you will get access of this particular component. You But before testing, because before testing the app component, you have to uh, collect, you have to access all of this method and property. For example, submit method you have to access. You have to access like data, what is available in data. Init form you have to access, or maybe you can access the component, this parts, like you can make the changes programmatically. So how you will get all of this access? So you can define in before each method. So I am going to write here the before each, and then in before each there will be a callback. So let's add this callback. That's it. So before running each of these test case, before each will get first, this will get called. So this is the best place to initialization. So here for getting access of all of this like component template URL or component method and property. So here you have to write something. So let's do some initialization. So to making to doing the configuration, you have to get this detail from the test bed. So I am using here the test bed. Test bed again comes from the Angular. TestBed, then configure testing modules, and we will do the same thing. Whatever is required to creating a component, we will add the same thing. So config in the configure testing module, you have to pass the object, and that object holds here import. There will be a import section. Same thing you can write which is required for this particular component. So as you know that we are using the reactive form, so reactive form you also need to add it here. So just like an app component, you can see there are the declaration, import, providers, something like that. Then only uh, then only this particular component will work, because as you know that modules is the basic building block in Angular, and in the modules, in this basic building block, all of this encapsulated. So without this, dependencies or importing these things, or without adding the provider, you cannot access this particular component. This will not work as expected. So that's why you have to add, you have to do the same thing here. So in import, it will take this is the array, and you can import anything in this array. So I am going to import a reactive form module. Okay, now apart from the reactive form, what is needed, which is declaration. Again, in the declaration you can define that you want to use the which component you want to use, or maybe you, if you are using any pipes, directives, or any component, all of these things you can declare here. So right now I am using the app component, so I am going to write only the app component. Otherwise, in this area you can add other component as well. When you will add, so suppose if you will use any child component, okay, right now there is a no child component, but suppose there are lots of child component, then all of this child component you have to import. Otherwise, if you will compile this component without that child component, that this will show the error. Why? Because this will not able to identify that particular child component selector, okay, in testing basically. Otherwise, because Angular application you already did all these things in app module.ts, so it's not required. Initialization is already done. You can use the selector, there is no issue. But if you are doing the testing and if you have any child component, then all of this child component you have to import, you have to declare here during the configuring a testing module. So right now there is one, that's why I have added only one. And then other property you have to add, which is the providers. Why providers? Because you are using here the services. In this particular component you are using the services and you are injecting this service. This is the API service, so you are injecting, so same thing you have to add it here as well, because this is a dependency, it is required for compiling or using this particular component. So again this will take a array, and in that array you can add a service, which is the API service, something like that. So if you will add these things, it means you are telling, it means that dependency, there are the two things here. Dependency injection token, it means during the injecting a particular let's say services class instance, then what is the dependency injection name you are using, token you are using, so which is the app service, and what you are injecting. So right now you are injecting the same services class object, if you will add in this way. But here we will not going to use this API service. Okay, we will create a fake or maybe duplicate of this method. Right now in this particular service there is a one method, which is the post data. So we will create a fake detail. Otherwise what will happen, it will call the API, and for in the real scenario it will call the API, and if it will call the API, then there will be a side effect in our system. Maybe data will get saved, or maybe some, like anything can be happen based on the logic. So why we will make a real, during the testing, unit testing, we will not do a real thing, okay, we will do the fake thing or duplicate thing. So we have to create a duplicate of this particular service instance. uh, yeah this this function, so we will create here. So how we will do, so we will not write in this way. Okay, again there is a time which is the 14 minutes is already passed, so I will create the next video and describe in the next part. So thank you very much.